As the CEO of a small company, I often struggle to know the difference between fireable performance and or cultural issues versus someone who doesn't do as great of a job as I hoped they would. I'm mostly talking about people in higher level jobs with greater responsibility, greater expectations, and often greater compensation. I believe keeping mediocre people around is both bad for business and bad for morale. So how do you decide if someone's performance is grounds for letting them go versus not? Ooh, this is an awesome question. I struggle with this all the time because I think one of the hard things about being a CEO is you want everyone, A, to care as much as you do, B, work as hard as you do, C, like give everything for the company the way you do, which is frankly just not a realistic way to think about anything in life, especially work and for people who work for you. But I do think there's an awesome opportunity here to address exactly what you're mentioning, which is what is the culture? Is it a culture of high performance? What are the values in your company? What is the type of work ethic and output that you stand for? Like, what are your standards? You know, in my mind, there are people who get to a certain point of things where they succeed. Maybe they're not learning and growing and changing as much as they need to or they should. And then they finally get to a point where it's kind of game over. They can't make it to the next step. They can't carry the water in the next phase of the journey. I think this happens frankly everywhere in life, not just at work. You know, I think a fireable offense is kind of harsh. The way I would think about this is I would sit down with your entire management team. To New Year, you say, hey, this is what my vision is for 2023. This is what I want us to accomplish as a team for 2023. This is what my standards are for this year. And then I think you should sit down with all of your business leaders or all the group leaders or your management team, and you have to have that same conversation. My expectation is that this year we're going to do this with this. My expectation is that you are going to drive the vision, that you're going to articulate the process, that you're going to create a framework, that you're going to break through in this category or with this client or with launching this thing, whatever it may be. I think you have to sit down with each manager and to have that conversation. And then you also need to be direct and say, there's some things that I think are holding you back from achieving this vision and achieving the standard that I'm setting for you. It could be the way they work with other groups. It could be executive maturity. It could be their work product. It could be their work ethic. It could be their communication style. It could be a whole bunch of things. But I think it's really important to set the big mission for the group and then to have the same vision shared with each one of your managers with some very specific acute feedback for how they're getting there. The other thing you might want to try is 360-degree reviews. We're doing that for the first time this year at Barstool, and I think it's going to be insanely helpful. I also selfishly find that it's going to be insanely helpful for me because then it's not just my opinion about if somebody's doing a good job or a bad job. It's like, here's everybody's collective feedback on where you're crushing it and where you're not. And you can add that for emphasis around where you want someone to go. If you lay out that gauntlet, if you lay out the standard and you set your vision, then you have something to go back to say you're not hitting the vision. If you don't do it, you don't have anything concrete there, and then it gets kind of gray and it gets a little bit messy. So the more you can set out, this is my expectation, this is where you're falling against that expectation, and this is where I want us to go, then you can say in 3 months' time or in 6 months' time, you're not getting there. This isn't going to work out. I think the best thing to do would be for you to move on, and I'm going to move on. So that's how I would handle that. Next question. I have a new manager who has zero to no interest in my growth in my sales position. I'm currently contracted and my contract ends next August. When I ask him what he needs to see from me in order to be fully signed on, he says, I need to get to know you better and grow the sales. Well, that was 3 months ago. Sales have grown and he avoids having another conversation about my growth every chance he gets. A little backstory is I went from teaching to pharmaceutical sales, and I want to learn as much as I can to not only grow in my position, but to help the company grow as well. I was wondering if you have any advice on how to get my manager to give me some sort of answer where I stand in my position. All right, I think you have a shitty manager. So let's just call that out. You have a shitty manager. He's avoidant. He's not particularly communicative. He doesn't seem very invested in you personally, let alone being invested in your growth. This guy clearly wants to sell pharmaceutical widgets or prescriptions or whatever it may be. He wants to sell shit. Just gonna wave to these nice people. So he clearly wants to sell. He clearly wants to sell drugs, or he clearly wants to sell pharmaceuticals, but doesn't seem like he's that interested in much else. To be honest, this is very common in sales jobs because what often makes great salespeople makes them terrible managers. So the first thing, just because it seems like you're new to the sales game in general, I think it has a lot of shitty managers in it. People who like to manage are kind of a different breed of cat than people who like to go sell and close the deal and make the sale and get the win. I think that you probably should give up on this guy as a person who is going to mentor you, who's going to grow you, who's frankly going to want to engage with you to have a meaningful discussion about your career. That doesn't mean give up on your job. What I would do is to look around you. Maybe some other sales manager has a lot to offer. Maybe your HR team does. Maybe your marketing team has a lot of smart people. Maybe the physicians group has great leaders in there. I think you can still learn from your job and about your job and how to be better at your job, even if your manager sucks and is weak. And I think actually the exercise of having to do that will give you a great skill set that you can build on over time. I would probably think twice before I signed on for another contract, and I would definitely look around, and I would look around and also be extremely choosy about the type of person you work for. Because to be honest, I think there is something to say where you can learn from people who are bad managers because you can learn how you don't want to manage. You can learn a lot from people around you, but ultimately you want to be in a place where you can make the sale, you can learn from your manager, and you can benefit from the people around you. All right, next question is, what's the proper amount of time to leave a company after your end of year bonus hits? Ooh, it depends how much you like your company and how loyal you are. If you are not loyal, I had a January 2 years ago where literally everyone got their bonus and then was like, peace, we're out. That sucked. It's kind of a fuck you to your manager. So just know that if you're like, hey, thanks for the bonus, I'm out of here the next day, your manager is going to take it as a fuck you. But that said, it's your career and it's your life and it's your payment for the last year's work. So you're totally entitled to bounce the day after you get your bonus. I don't think there's a etiquette or there's a proper amount of time between when you get your bonus and when you leave your job. I do think that there is some sensitivity to leaving the next day or resigning the next week, but it really pretty much depends on when you find that next job and what that next job is. And if it's the dream job and the job for you and you have to resign immediately, you do it. You've got to put this job that you have in the rear view. You got to take the payment for the work that you did. You got to feel good about what you accomplished. You should try to leave on a good foot and with good relationships, and then you go on your way.